Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. My name is Brian Harrison, and I am a cloud solution architect with Microsoft. And in this video series, we're going to be talking about mastering Azure, and this is all brought to you from Pact Publishing. Now, Azure is a cloud solution that is available from Microsoft, and it provides a number of great services. But in this particular video series, we're going to be focusing on infrastructure as a service. And infrastructure as a service's primary components are compute, networking, and storage. So in this video series, we'll break down all of those, talk about how you can create them, how you can leverage them, and build out your own architectures to be used inside of Azure. So let's head over to our PowerPoint deck and we'll take a look at what's coming in this video series. Mastering Azure, infrastructure as a service. So let's start from the very beginning and we'll give a basic introduction of who I am. As I mentioned, my name is Brian Harrison and I am a cloud solution architect for Microsoft. I've been with Microsoft for the last 2.5 years in a cloud solution architect role the entire time. I've got a very, very diverse background, but I've been working in the software industry for software companies for 20 plus years. I have a background in working with production ready and cloud ready deployments in corporate environments across many, many different industries, with some of my expertise in public sector primarily. Many years teaching and developing architectures for the cloud for everything from small to large enterprise class customers, as well as many years developing solutions for the cloud using numerous languages and technologies. And I'm particularly a fan of open source technologies with JavaScript and Node and items like that being my primaries at the moment. Let's start from the very beginning though. What is the cloud? Now, the easiest way to describe it, and this is the way I describe it to my mother, for example, is that the cloud is a publicly shared data center infrastructure. So if you know what a data center is, it's just a set of hardware, servers, compute, networking, and storage that then are available to, in a data center's case, probably a single customer, or maybe it can be carved out for multiple customers if you're talking about a colo. But at the end of the day, you have a data center to start with, but then you can carve up that data center using virtualization, which has been around for a long time, thanks to companies like VMware, for example. You can take virtualization and then carve up that hardware into smaller pieces and then provide those virtualized servers to customers to use as a service. And that's where the cloud really comes into play. It's taking that virtualization model and carving it up and providing it as a service and then charging it at a subscription level per hour, per month, per day, per amount of bandwidth, per amount of storage. You get the idea. That is really what the cloud is, providing technology as a service. Now, there are three primary levels: infrastructure as a service, which is what we'll be focusing on in this series, platform as a service, software as a service. Microsoft is one of the only companies that I am aware of that actually provides all three. Software as a service, I think, is fairly obvious. It's actually providing software hosted someplace else, made available to the public through a subscription model, usually per user or per time logged in, things like that. Some examples in Microsoft Office 365, where you're purchasing email, Word, PowerPoint, SharePoint, all of those are considered software as a service. But not only talking about Microsoft, you can also look at a company like Salesforce, for example. Their customer relationship management is considered software as a service. Platform as a service is taking some of the development tools that you would use to build an application and making them available as a service. So one of the ones that I can think of very easily off the top of my head is a full text search index. If you go to Amazon or any commerce-based website, there is always a search bar. Well, that search mechanism is backed by a set of search servers that have been indexing all of the content and then making it easier for you to find things when you put something in the search box. That is considered platform as a service. Infrastructure as a service is providing that virtualized compute, networking, and storage that you normally think of from your data center and making it available as a service so that you can purchase virtual machines, virtual networks, public IP addresses, load balancers, storage accounts that can contain document storage, blob storage, queues, tables, all of those kinds of things are all considered infrastructure as a service. Now, what exactly is Azure? Azure is a fantastic culmination of both infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. Now, as I said, Microsoft provides software as a service as well. It is built on top of Azure, but it is not considered Azure. Azure is providing technology as a service, infrastructure or platform as a service. And one of the big things on the platform as a service side is data analytics and things like that as a service. Now, what exactly is this particular course going to cover? As I mentioned, we're going to be focusing on infrastructure as a service, and there are three primary categories for that, but we will also give a good starting point for Azure from the subscription perspective, the resource management perspective. So what we'll learn here is at first, we'll start with resource management. We'll talk about the subscriptions. We'll talk about the Azure portal, which is going to be your primary interface for interacting with Azure. And then we'll talk about how you can manage the resources that you eventually create. And a resource is any particular service that you can spin up inside of an Azure region. We'll then go into storage. And I want to point out that the two bottom areas, storage and networking, although this is not the direct order that we will be talking about things, storage and networking I put on the bottom because they are the base services that every other service inside of Azure are built on top of. So with storage, we'll talk about storage accounts. And for the infrastructure as a service topic, we will also, of course, be covering managed disks, which, of course, tie into any virtual machine that you happen to be leveraging. Within networking, we will cover virtual networks, which gives you the isolation layer for you as a customer to guarantee that nothing that you create or use inside of Azure is going to be talking over top of or possibly providing avenues into other customers. The virtual network is that isolation layer. But then what kinds of IP addresses can you provide within that isolation layer? What kind of load balancing? What kind of security? Things like firewalls. How can you do those kinds of things inside of Azure? And I will say that infrastructure as a service is usually the best starting point for any new customer to the cloud, whether it's Azure or one of the other cloud providers, because almost every customer understands infrastructure as a service right from the get-go. After networking, we'll then cover compute, which of course covers virtual machines, and those are your different servers with different amounts of memory, different amount of disk, different amount of virtual cores, things like that. But then also, how can you put those into scale and availability sets so that you can architect them in the cloud in such a way that you can guarantee the most amount of uptime possible to you and to your customers. The last thing, though, is we will be talking about scripting. So for everything that we do in the first 4 sections, we will be doing in the portal. I will be demonstrating how to create almost every kind of resource, or at least at the very least talking about them inside the portal. But then the last sections, the last pieces of each section, we will actually go through scripting exercises around each of these individual topics. And we'll actually build out a full-blown architecture inside of Azure that contains a virtual network, load balancing, virtual machines, scale sets, IP addresses, NIC cards, many of the different resources that are available inside of our infrastructure as a service capabilities, but not necessarily all of them.